Yeah, Ken, yeah. 9:59.
Close as you can get without being there.
Okay. We will begin, but first, a couple of announcements here. We will be participating here in interactive technology. JJ Weldham will be attending the Pine County Board. Obviously, he's online and he will be on screen at all times to be seen and heard. And our meeting is live streamed. So if somebody has something to say, please come up to the podium so everybody can hear, including all of us and JJ. So with that, we will call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public forum. Does anybody wish to speak at public forum?
I do. I do wish to speak.
Who do we have?
Gussie.
Morning.
Go ahead.
All right. First, can I just offer a thank you to Mark LeBrun for visiting Sandstone Township and helping out with some of our road issues, giving us some good information.
We like those Gussies. Thank you. Those thank yous, Gussie. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, so I have a few things to say just about the levy and the money being spent. I understand the county is looking at purchasing a armored vehicle. I'm hoping that that goes by the wayside. We're looking at $300,000 to $1 million. We need more sheriff's deputies is what we need, who work in the middle of the night. I'm going to repeat this. I took 40 minutes for the only 2 deputies on duty in the county to get to my house when someone was trying to break into it at 2:45 in the morning. I still don't know what happened with that. I never got any update from anybody on whether or not that guy was apprehended. He stole another vehicle. He stole a vehicle, left it out here and came and tried to steal mine, tried to get into my house. Stole another one, was apprehended in Ramsey. Okay. And he had papers in the stolen car from a previous one that he'd been to court with. Okay. Okay. And next, 7 people came to the board meeting within this last year to instruct the board to defund the library. We know nobody comes to these meetings, so it's wonderful to see a handful of people who are actually interested. These are voices we need to listen to. Those residents of the county are not happy with the porn that masquerades as children's literature, such as It's Perfectly Normal. Get those books off the shelves of the library. We came to give you direction, and you can't refuse to listen. We're trying to help you. We're coming to help you. That's what you should be appreciating. Not only that, you intend to increase funding. That's a huge mistake. Terry Lubgren made a motion to keep more. This is the last thing I have to say. Terry Lubgren made a motion to keep more of the tax forfeited proceeds from this, keeping them from the schools and the townships and keeping them at the county level. You're strangling the schools and the townships by doing that. We've had to do with that decrease in funds from our township lands. Sell those lands, release those at saleable prices so they can start to produce taxes back to the county, back to the township, back to the schools. You're increasing employees and taxes in a county that lost 1,500 residents between 2010 and 2020. We all know the preliminary levy can be decreased in December, but not increased. In the 18 years I've covered the board, it was never decreased. Make some changes, put some thought into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on time.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll look to adopt the agenda. We got any changes? I know we got some.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if we could add consent agenda item number 7B consideration of the Office of Justice Programs Crime Victim Services 2024 grant in the amount of $70,000. And if we could add regular agenda item 7.1, consideration of a special meeting for the purpose of touring the 49er Training Center. We received an invitation from them over the weekend to come up to their facility and do a tour. Oh, and then just a note under upcoming meetings that the Technology Committee meeting has been canceled for September 26th.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda with the revisions.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore to adopt the agenda as amended. We will take roll call on all our votes today.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lovegren.
Yes.
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig. Thank you.
Approve the minutes of the September 5th, 2023 County Board minutes and summary for publication. Ludwig, move.
Upton will second.
Motion by Ludwig, seconded by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lovegren.
Aye.
4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then the minutes of the board's reports and correspondence, Pine County Zoning Board minutes from August of 23, the Snake River Watershed Management Board correspondence regarding resolution or dissolution.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion?
District 3, Commissioner Lovegren.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
Thank you.
And then moves us on to the consent agenda. You've had that in front of you for a while.
Ludwig will move it. I'll second.
Motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? If not, go ahead, Debbie.
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lovegren.
Aye.
Thank you.
Moves us to our regular agenda items, Health Insurance Committee report.
Health insurance, okay. So we we have a couple options that we need to look at for budgeting that will be coming out in the budget meeting at the end when we, but what they're saying that we're going to need and versus what we believe that we need to get our resources up or to get the balance up in our funds differentiate. We don't have the high users that we had last year right now. We've got, I believe, 2. But I think last year we had 6. So it's really nice to know that our employees are healthier and that's better. Anything you want to add?
I would just add that, it was a big step for us to do self-insurance. And I think it's kind of working. And I think if we do the same, if things are kind of the same as this year or this year as last year, we're going to be in, I think, pretty good shape. But you never know what's going to happen. But
Are we all done now on coupling from
yes,
UCare or whatever it was, UH?
well, not really, but I think we have the number, right? We know what it's going to be.
We do. And I'm sorry, you're in the wrong spot.
I thought that was the final.
So what we had was that we figured that United Healthcare would be anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 to pay them off the runout claims. It actually came to $331,956. We were just talking today, and we're going to request an an exact ratio as to what it was spent on and how that was utilized, just to verify those amounts so that we know that they were good. So the balance that we have as of August 31st was $772,002 or $673 in the account. So yeah, what we were hoping for was exceeded.
Okay, thanks. No action needed there.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
maybe just a note, Dave Minke, County Administrator, that the county board will probably be asked to set rates at the first meeting in October so that we can move forward with budgeting and open enrollment and contract negotiations. The insurance committee left it that they would look at rates again after we had the final number from UHC. And so Jackie will work to set up, communicate that and see if we can get another meeting together to talk specifically rates and get any feedback before that first board meeting in October.
Okay, thanks.
The other thing that came out of that was dental renewal. Guardian's offering a 19% rate increase for 2024 based on the claims, which were at 121.7% as of July. So the people who have dental insurance are going to be seeing an increase in that. That's not going to affect the county, though. That will affect the employees. Yeah.
That it?
That's
Thank you. Personnel Committee report.
I'll take it or want me to? Okay. We met September 11th, made the following recommendations. Health and Human Services acknowledge resignation of eligibility worker Samantha Kubish effective August 21st, 2023. The hiring of eligibility worker Katie Sawyer effective September 20th, 2023, $20.90 per hour, grade 6, step 1. And then approve the addition of 2 new grade 10 social workers or registered nurse positions in the HHS Social Services Unit and authorize the recruitment to meet a growing age and disabled population in Pine County, and to approve the backfill of the positions of any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. Positions are funded through the program revenue. In the auditor treasurer's office, approved the filling of vacant accounting case aid position with an account technician position to meet the needs of the department, and approve backfill of the positions and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer, and approve the job title change for the open zoning and solid waste technician position to environmental technician to better reflect the job duties and attract more qualified candidates. And with that, I will make a motion to approve that.
And Ludwig will second.
The motion by Moore, seconded by Ludwig. Any discussion? If not, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren.
Aye.
4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
Thank you.
Anything else on that? That it, Josh?
Yeah, that's all I had. Did you have anything to add?
No. All right. Kelly Schroeder, auditor treasurer, uncollected accounts, uncollectible accounts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kelly Schroeder, County Auditor Treasurer. So as we've kind of wrapped up our 2022 financial year finally, we took some time to just review our records, and really it came down to we have a handful of accounts that we have sitting out there as accounts receivable. So monies that's owed to the county. Many of, well, all of ours will never actually be collected. So it's a proven business move to just write them off and move on. There were several different types of accounts that I brought forward. So the first were the mobile home and personal property tax accounts. I pulled those that were greater than 10 years old and have those on a list. Overall, our way to collect those is through, if they don't pay them, is through revenue recapture, meaning we file with the Department of Revenue. If the person is owed like a property tax refund or an income tax refund, it would be diverted to us. That only works when you have good information on the people. So at least a name and an address that matches something of their records. And at this point, with those accounts being 10 years old, it's very unlikely that we're going to collect on them at this point because our names and our addresses for sure are likely outdated for those folks at this time. The second type of account is some health and human services charges. And most of those are ones that are greater than 3 years old, however, have less than a $5 balance. So on those, it financially doesn't make sense for us to keep trying to collect them when there's $1.25 due for the staff time and the postage and things to mail those bills out. There are some folks that end up with small bills. However, a lot of times they're ongoing clients. So we're able to package those like 3 of them together. So it ends up to be a decent amount of money. However, on these clients were no longer seen, they're gone, and it just doesn't make sense to keep putting effort into those. And then in the health and human services area too, we do have 2 accounts that are greater than 10 years old with balances over $5. Between those 2 accounts, the total's under $100. Both of them, we don't have current information at all on them. There was the individual listing. Questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
On the mobile homes, how many of them are still sitting out there? Do we know?
Most of these are no longer sitting out there.
Okay.
So for mobile homes, another piece of collection. So if the folks don't pay their property taxes, one kind of nice way that we get a lot of them is in order for them to transfer the title on them, they have to come in and get a certificate of taxes paid from us. However, a lot of these mobile homes ended up in the junkyard, so they never requested it. And unfortunately, sometimes it sounds like some DMVs aren't as good at requesting that form. Ours in Pine City is really great, but others are not necessarily so great on requesting that form. And so.
Yeah, I thought quite a few disappeared.
Right. And then they don't have to get that certificate of taxes paid and they're just gone.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? You have to act on this in the form of.
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
A second.
Got a motion by Matt, second by Terry to basically write off these uncollectible accounts. Any discussion on that?
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Walden.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Fair housing activity, Leslie.
Good morning, everybody. Leslie Sauter here, your Economic Development Coordinator. On the agenda, this is kind of just a checkbox activity, but it is an important one. As part of your Community Development Block Grant coronavirus funding that you received a couple years ago to do the broadband activity around Hinckley to some of the underserved areas with low and moderate incomes, as well as the shelter retrofit project, we are required to do a fair housing activity every year of the grant. And over the course of the last couple of years, we've done the easy ones, displaying fair housing posters, adding a fair housing logo to letterhead, and distributing brochures to the public. And so this one seems like a relatively easy one as well, where we just show a video and add it to an agenda so that it becomes part of the public record, and just it helps inform people who are attending the meeting, as well as yourselves and staff that are present, on what the fair housing laws do and what they protect people against. So I think Ryan has it queued up.
Hi, everyone. Do any of you receive public assistance like food support, MFIP, SSI, energy assistance, or free school lunch? If so, the Minnesota Human Rights Act protects you from discrimination. A landlord cannot deny you housing because you receive public assistance. If you have experienced discrimination, call 651-539-1100. Again, that phone number is 651-539-1100. This video is brought to you by the Fair Housing Implementation Council and Housing Link.
We now have a time for anybody from the public to comment on this. You don't have to, but we have to ask if there's anybody that wants to comment. So, thank you. Is that it, Leslie?
That is it, unless you guys have questions or
That
comments.
was pretty short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shoreline ordinance amendment, commercial land use, Caleb.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Caleb Anderson, the zoning administrator for Pine County. I also want to introduce Aaron Hoxie from our office, who's been helping out with this process of working on an amendment for our county shoreline ordinance. So the review of commercial standards in shoreline areas is really kind of spurred by two things that came up in the last couple of years. There was a proposal for a resort where it was identified that in the county shoreline ordinances, the resorts are considered both a conditional use and a permitted use. Obviously, the conditional use is a much more cumbersome process to get through, more public involvement, where a permitted use is a much simpler process for being able to get the permit. So one of our goals was to fix some of that ambiguity. Another issue that came up was there was a campground proposed on Cross Lake where we suddenly realized that our ordinance refers to campgrounds, RV parks, and camping facilities, and says that they're each allowed in different places in different districts, some and not in others, and and none of them are defined. So it's to date, it's not clear where you can build a campground near a lake. So we're trying to make the process much more transparent so people who want to start these businesses know where they can do it. When proposals come forward, the county knows what the ordinance is requiring and not. So we took a deep dive and understanding that these uses have not really been looked at since 1993 when the ordinance was adopted. So with kind of some more experience under our belt, a fresh perspective about what is allowed in our ordinance and what is not. So next slide, please. Why did that? I thought Ryan was there, sorry. Okay, all right. So our main objectives were, one was to conform to the Minnesota rules, chapter 6120. So if there are places that we are less restrictive than Minnesota 6120, we could get ourselves into trouble once those projects come up. Also, we wanted to restructure the allowed uses to be more clear. So the way that we list out what uses are allowed in different districts, we thought there was some room for improvement that could make things more transparent for everybody.
We good questions as we go, Caleb, or?
Anytime.
So my first one is when we review chapter 6120, is that the DNR rules or?
Correct.
So did we go stricter or did we stay in line with their rules?
We are pretty well aligned. There's a couple of places where we've diverged and made things. There's a few things that are newer uses that were less common, like vacation rentals, where they're silent on some of those things.
Okay. So you'll talk about those things.
Yeah, I'll show the highlights of the content. And then adding performance standards for certain commercial uses. So, and basically that was just a question to the zoning board. Are there specific types of things that, if someone wants to build a campground, do we need more prescriptive language? What is required of a campground? What is not? And then lastly, to look at the definitions. So in my example of the campgrounds, we had RV parks, campgrounds, and camping facilities, none of them were defined. So when developer Joe comes up, well, I don't know which one you are because they're not defined. So we wanted to make sure that we had good definitions guiding what everything was. And we've been working, the county zoning board been working on this since last November. They were the primary review body through the process. We also worked with the Pine County Coalition of Lake Associations, and that was our primary avenue for public outreach at this point. And this is a fantastic group that we have assembled here. Basically, the leadership from all of the lake associations across the county, all of the bigger lakes, we get together about quarterly, and they have their fingers on the pulse very well for their lake communities, and they gave us a tremendous amount of really good feedback. And then as well, we've engaged shoreline business owners. Mark Lambert from Sand Lake Resort has been engaged in the process as well. Luke Heggie, we've been engaged with him as well. The Minnesota DNR and the Pine County Attorney along the way. We kind of have been fitting these into our zoning board agendas as we have space. So that's part of the delay. There was a lot of applications this year, a lot of new projects and variances. So it was a little bit broken up the pace at times. So this is just kind of a visual of the allowed uses. This right here, the current approach basically shows kind of all our allowed uses go by district and then in kind of a list format. So forestry, single family, duplex. And then they also say all the permitted uses in the previous district. And we saw that there was a lot of redundancy with this style of doing it. And this new proposed approach is a table format that actually mimics 6120. So it's very easy for us to know, are we in alignment as restrictive as the state rules when we mimic their format? As well, the DNR model shoreline ordinance takes a different approach as well, which was also considered. And we ultimately landed on what was used in 6120. And the whole ordinance amendment is in the packet, but I'm just kind of pulling out the highlights here and try to not make this too exhaustive. So some of the key changes just for that table that I want to point out. Vacation rentals, Airbnbs, these things are becoming much more popular. In some cases, we currently treat them as a conditional or interim use. So there's a public hearing. They come before the zoning board in order to get a permit to open an Airbnb. That process is administratively cumbersome. We've been doing it that way since 2017. We had one meeting where we had four different public hearings for different projects in one meeting. And our experience has been that we're seeing not a high participation rate really with those, but we've had enough participation over the years that we're seeing what the neighbors' concerns are. Where are they going to park? How many people are they going to have? Are they going to be having family reunions every weekend? So then in this conditional use permit process, we're putting specific conditions on to address those. But now we've gone along far enough that our conditions pretty well look the same every time. So our idea here is to move them to a permitted use and adopt specific standards that they basically mimic those boilerplate conditions we've been using. That way, they would get a permit from staff. We would not hold a public hearing, post in the newspaper for 10 days and record it to the property. There's a lot of steps in the conditional use permit, and we feel like we can operate more efficient land use planning this way. Any questions on that? Or does that make sense?
So Caleb, out of all the Airbnbs, how many do you think you're catching right now?
It's not a large fraction.
Yeah, I get that feeling that there's a lot of people that just rent their place out.
Right.
They don't really consider themselves a business, but they are having an impact on the neighborhood.
Right. Or the potential to. And we have not gone chasing them or kind of looking through the Airbnb website at this point. So the policy right now is basically when people ask us the question, yes, you do need a permit. It's an interim use permit. This is the process. We would like to be a little more proactive so that it's an even playing field. So that, everybody's having to go through the same process and every neighborhood kind of gets the same level of protection. So we can't really do that in the current format. We do not have the time and capacity to run all those public hearings. So I think we can create a much more fair process as a permitted use. Any other questions on that? Home occupation. Currently, the ordinance requires if you're going to run a business in your home, a conditional use permit. In the 8 years I've been doing this, we haven't had an application like that yet. They're great, but usually it's not very visible, so we don't know it's there anyway. So we are proposing to move that to a permitted use and have a few performance standards. So as long as, it blends in well with the neighborhood still, and it does not have the appearance of being very commercial, that can continue. And actually no physical permit is actually required. It's an allowed use. So we want to make it a little simpler for that on that front. We've added a use called a low impact campground. And we've allowed it we're proposing to allow it as a conditional use permit in residential districts. That's one of the things that's come up is that the way the ordinance, what Minnesota 6120 reads, is that campgrounds would really only be allowed in commercial zoning districts. And we've had some feedback, particularly along the Snake River, where there's bigger properties, it's very wooded, not very dense housing, that, hey, a small campground with two campsites wouldn't hurt anybody. So we tried to kind of respond to that by creating this new land use that ends with some specific standards. And then the last one there, RV parks and campgrounds are more clearly prescribed in that. And essentially, if you're not a low impact campground, it would be a commercial planned unit development, which we feel that is how Minnesota 6120 requires them.
So that language will defer which one it is if you're a low impact, okay.
And in the next slide, so right here, so we went through all the definitions of all these different uses and because for segue, I'll do the last one. So that low impact campgrounds consisting of 15 or fewer sites. Going further, we have some performance standards and then there's some density standards too. So if it's a quarter-acre lot, you're not going to have 15 campsites, but under certain density, it will be allowed. So home occupations, we've expanded that so you can run a home occupation in an accessory building. The current ordinance says it has to be in the house. Well, if it's out in the pole building and nobody knows it's there, who cares? So that's kind of where the zoning board landed anyway. So we've made that less restrictive. And this is a big one right here, and we've gotten quite a bit of feedback up for resorts, particularly from Mr. Lambert, which it's all right for good discussion. But resorts were previously included in the definitions of both surface water oriented commercial, which is permitted, and commercial planned unit development, which is conditional. So we've removed it from the definition of surface water oriented commercial to make it very clearly a conditional use. And my opinion is that is prudent from the fact that there was a lawsuit initiated under this exact situation. That you can't be both, essentially, is from everything I've heard. So this has been the direction of the zoning board thus far. Any questions on that?
I'm a little confused on that.
Sure.
I don't know if I understand what we're.
Yep. So imagine we've got a big list of allowed uses.
Yep.
One of them says surface water oriented commercial are a permitted use. And then when you look up the definition for surface water oriented commercial, it includes a few things. One of them is resort. But then it also says commercial planned unit development is a conditional use back in that table. And then when you look up the definition, it includes the resort. So essentially it's telling us that they're permitted, simple process, and they're conditional, a little more cumbersome process. So what do you as a zoning administrator do when that application comes in? You consult your attorney and you hope you don't get sued from either, whether it be the developer who really wants you to say permitted use, or an aggrieved party, whether it be a neighbor, a lake association, a township, who says, no, it's a permitted, it's a conditional use. So we have this conflict that we're better off, in my opinion, to resolve it in the ordinance and where, before it comes up. And one of the difficulties is that it's listed that same way in Minnesota 6120.
Which same way?
Conflicting,
As both?
both.
Okay.
But,
And they
but because
never
it's
resolved that.
To date, that is correct.
But with conditional use, doesn't mean it's not allowed. They just have to go through a process and meet a set of standards.
Correct. And one of the tricky, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I think this is a two-parter, right? So the first part is there is ambiguous language in the ordinance, and rules of good drafting would say it should be clear in the ordinance, whatever it is. Then it's, should it be a permitted use or a conditional use? And so a couple of minutes ago, Caleb reviewed some current conditional uses that are suggested to be permitted uses with performance standards. And so that's the second part of the question is, do you want to make it a permitted use with performance standards, or do you want to make it a conditional use? And good ordinance management would say a conditional use shall be granted if the conditions which are reasonable are met. So in essence, it's implementing performance standards on a case-by-case basis to account for unique situations versus one-size-fits-all performance standards. Is that fair, Caleb?
Right. So some of the main performance standards is there is a density standard in the commercial plan unit development requirements. So if we are calling our resorts a commercial plan unit development, they have to meet a density standards. There's an open space requirement, there's stormwater management requirements, a number of these types of things.
So to be clear then, so you kind of want to say, I can permit this with some performance standards and bypass a public hearing if it meets your criteria.
The current proposal does not state that. The current proposal says it would be a conditional use. It would be reviewed against commercial plan unit development requirements, and then it would go before the county zoning board for review.
Okay.
And part of that, in that resort proposal, when the township up in Windermere decided to give it a staff administrative permit, there ended up being public meetings on it anyway, because anytime all of our commercial zoning districts are pretty spotty. They're embedded amongst very residential neighborhoods, residential bays of the lake. There's a lot of neighbors who stand to be affected by that proposal and a strong desire for those neighborhoods to engage in the process. So you can imagine if that was happening next door to you, if you'd like some transparency about what are the standards in a public process.
So that's my next confusing part is Windermere Township says you're okay to go ahead. And then do we trump them?
We were silent, except for there was a lawsuit that said because our ordinance requires them to be a commercial planned unit development. Part of that lawsuit, and there are folks who know much more than I do. Part of it was the township has to be as restrictive as the county. So the township ordinance is looking both at the county and the DNR standards. But no, we were not involved in any way though, except for that our document was referred to.
I think that's what I'm concerned about is that if somebody comes and they have a plan that the township doesn't say yes and we say no and the DNR says yes, and then this thing gets drug out forever.
In this case, because they have their own shoreline ordinance, we were not referred to make any decisions. So that wouldn't be an issue.
So what we change ours to today, is that going to affect Windermere Township since they have their own shoreline?
Right, they would, and they've already been tasked by the DNR to update. There were some things missing in their ordinance related to commercial planning and developments.
But now they're up to snuff.
Not yet.
Yeah.
They're actually waiting for our process to unfold, which is in front of you today.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
thank you. Just, Terry made the comment, if we adopt today. So just to clarify, there's nothing proposed for adoption today. Today's conversation is to get your feedback on the direction the zoning board is going.
Correct.
And it will go back to the zoning board. There'll be some additional rework. A public hearing process before it's presented for approval. So I know you knew that. I just wanted to be sure.
And thanks for the reminder that we don't have to vote. We're not going to, we can't vote today,
Right.
anything. We're talking about, Caleb wants to know what our feedback is so he can go back. My only feedback is that at some point, you sit down with Windermere Township and make sure that we're on the same page.
I think that's fair.
I think that's. I mean, for everybody's sake, whether you're the guy with the little, 800 square foot cabin or the guy that wants to build a resort, for everybody's sake, if we're on the same page, then we don't.
Right.
Get on in these things.
Yep.
And then. Where's the DNR? They. In this whole process.
Thank you for asking that question, because I was going to pad Dave's last comment with that we've submitted a soft submittal to the DNR for comments already, as well as our attorney. So your comments along with theirs will go back to the zoning board. But officially, they will need to approve of the amendment before we can adopt it. So we've given a soft submittal, and we've also asked the question of them, where is the latitude if the zoning board, the county board desires to have this be a permitted use? Where is the flexibility to work with the DNR to do that?
Right, yeah, exactly. You captured my thoughts, because that's, we don't want to lead somebody way down this road and then somebody comes from at the last minute and says, oh.
This could have been a permitted use.
Sure.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, so that's always been my position, is that, and I'm just one person, but we shouldn't make our shoreline stuff stricter than the DNRs. And, and I don't know, that's just my position.
And I think that in this particular case of this whole amendment, that is, this resorts piece is the only thing where I would say we are, except for the fact that their rules are poorly written. And they say both. They conflict with themselves. But that's the only place where I would say we are taking the more restrictive side, because honestly, I don't believe that they will approve the ordinance the other direction, but I have asked the question, so.
Yes.
Is the DNR looking at fixing their language too? I mean, if townships or cities are one way and the county's one way, and then you've got the DNR being a totally different way, we're not working it together and we're creating issues for people who want to move on.
I've been told there's been efforts in the past to rewrite the Minnesota rules, because they were written by the DNR. They're not statute, right? And those have not been successful in the past. Apparently, it's been difficult to get reauthorized to write those rules, is what I've been told.
Caleb, earlier you had talked about low impact campgrounds. Was that the right term? And you didn't mention regular campgrounds. What is the distinction and what are regular campgrounds? Or did I?
So I provide the definition here for a low impact campground. And then so we'll go, I have just a couple more slides, which kind of go into those. Maybe we should just do that.
Yeah.
And we'll hit it. Okay, so I just wanted to give you just a little snapshot of the performance standards for vacation rentals, because of all the changes, this is going to be the most everyday. This is going to be something that's going to come up at the coffee shop where my neighbor wants to have an Airbnb or whatever. So we're proposing administrative permits every 3 years. We're requiring compliance with the Minnesota Department of Health. Occupancy limits, that's one of the biggest things that we see from neighbors is, we don't want a family reunion every weekend. So we're limiting that at 2 people per bedroom or septic system capacity. We also don't want to see septic systems failing, which actually did happen in one up in location where a guy didn't have a permit. He was I think he had his 10 people was his occupancy limit on his listing, but the septic system was rated for much fewer. It was leaking. So you don't want those conditions. So we have a condition related to that. With our coalition of lake associations, how many boats are on the lake as a result of this project or any commercial project is one of their biggest concerns. So we address that. This is also addressing this kind of occupancy, no outside tents or RVs. And additional dwelling units are allowed on larger lots in accessory dwelling structures.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just going back to that, one thing that and this is just vacation rental. So this doesn't, like if you own the property, you live there,
Right.
you can have, like I was just looking at the boats. I know a lot of people have 2 jet skis.
Unregulated.
And okay.
Yeah.
And part of that too is like I've said, we've kind of, I've kind of contradicted the family reunion. What about the person that owns a house that has a family reunion? And has 25 people spend the night or whatever, that type of thing. So they're not affected.
Unaffected.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. I remember that conversation. I remember Steve saying the difference is when you own the house, you still have to live with your neighbors next weekend where the renter does not. Right. Yeah. So it affects your behavior potentially. And we adopted a bunch of performance standards for low-income campground. We are making a statement that says campgrounds not meeting the definition of a low-impact campground are only allowed as commercial PUD within districts allowing commercial PUDs as a conditional use. So that's where the distinction is made. And then the zoning board went through this carefully to try to really think about if you lived in a residential neighborhood, how could a campground kind of fit in with that? And they thought that once you add RV pads and all of that additional impervious surface, slow traffic on the road, different things, suddenly it feels less residential. So they wanted tents only. They wanted it set back a healthy distance from the water. And we provided a density limit that it matches residential density on certain lakes. They said a lot of these are probably going to be canoe kayak situations. So maybe we just put no boat slips. And part of these is we also had to mimic the commercial plan unit development standards. So we had looked at those contents and tried to check those boxes. So these are standards that any campground would have to comply with, but we're just kind of making it a little simpler. And then there's some quiet hours.
What is a PUD?
Planned unit development.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to vary a little on this, say they wanted to do tents only, but they want to be 50 feet from, then they just go to the next level of permitted.
Or apply for a variance. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the high points of, I believe it's like a 15-page ordinance amendment. So I don't want to get overly exhaustive. So this has been helpful. Are there any other comments that you want brought to the county zoning board?
Anybody? JJ?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would just like to say that it's always, for example, the Sand Lake Resorts right up in our area, that it's been a resort my entire life. It's been there forever. I just I wouldn't want to move forward with anything that would hurt not only Sand Lake Resort, but any other resort in our county. I just don't see a real reason to make any changes on that now. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Well, thanks, Caleb. And then you'll schedule a public hearing once this goes back to the zoning board and gets regurgitated and.
Yep.
All right,
So we'll be back to discuss it again with public hearing.
all right.
Thank you all.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Caleb.
Our next big item is consider the adoption of the property tax levy and budget.
Mr. Chair, we've got to award a highway
Oh,
contract.
I'm sorry.
Engineer LeBrun is online.
I'm sorry.
Mark LeBrun, County.
I skipped down a couple. Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
You hear me good?
Hi, Mark. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so we opened bids on SAP 058-609-016 last Tuesday, and we got 3 bids. 2 were really good, and I would recommend awarding to Redstone Construction $3,224,702, and they were almost 11% under, and they want to get going a little bit early, so that all sounds pretty good to me. So, any questions?
My only question is, what's the estimated completion date?
Well, I think we've got August 1st in the contract, but we're hoping they'll be done before that. So if things,
Okay.
you know, we want to have enough room in there for them to get the work done, but I think it'll get done before that. So.
All right. Thank you. Yes.
When are you thinking they're gonna start?
They're gonna start probably in mid-November. So they'll, you know, when they do the bridge removal, they do a lot of saw cutting, and if you get too late in the year, it kind of with the freezing and it kind of turns into a grout, and so it just kind of seizes back together. So they want to get in, start saw cutting, you know, in mid-November before it gets too cold. So. And we'll get some information out on the radio and the paper, and we'll probably have a sign out there, you know, on each side so they know and they can plan accordingly.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll move to accept the bid.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Moore, second by Lovegren, to accept the bid from Redstone Construction for the County Road 9 bridge, I'll call it, for $3,224,702. No cents. Any discussion? Not, Debbie?
District 3, Commissioner Lovegren.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Waldham.
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Right.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Employee wellness fair update, Samantha.
You know what? Want to ask a question quick? You're talking about this one, the cooperative construction agreement with MnDOT.
Construction agreement, we have to approve.
It has regular agenda on here that Mark has, so
Mine says
it's for Highway 15. But if you look at it,
looks like.
it's a resolution for agency agreement, and it was in the consent part of the packet. Is Mark still on?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think it's right here in.
Yeah, I think contracts are being put on the consent agenda now.
So that was consent on that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I just wanted to make sure that we don't pass.
think
Okay, sorry.
Thanks, Mark.
Hi, Sam.
I'm just here to do a quick update and answer any questions that may pop up about the wellness fair that Public Health is kind of leading the charge for. So it's going to be October 5th from 9 to 4 in the courthouse. We did ask the staff months and months and months ago, where would you be able to go? And most people said the courthouse, or they would happily come down from Sandstone. So that's how we landed there. We will have food trucks. We will have all sorts of fun stuff, but all really grounded in well-being and the science behind well-being. So we'll have speakers from our EAP program come and talk about resilience, work-life balance. We have one of our fabulous health educators, Haley, talking about mindful and intuitive eating, and then other nutrition in a different breakout. We have a local yoga instructor doing yoga, desk exercises with PT Queens, who they're PT and trainers, but they're talking about here's movements you can do just at your desk. You don't have to make these crazy, like run to the gym in your 15-minute break. Like, no, it's okay. You can build it into your day. And then all day events with health screenings. So if you want to check your A1C or your blood pressure, come hang out with one of our nurses, or cholesterol. Blood typing with Memorial Blood Bank, chair massages. So 10-minute chair massages. You're not going to be there for an hour, but 10 minutes is always nice. Hygge Hangout is the break room. We're kind of taking over for the day. We've got human resources as one of our stops in the passport. So go hang out with Jackie and Jen and Jess. Interactive art, which is a color by number outside. So everybody can kind of go together to paint this painting that will then get hung up. And it's actually a painting of, I can't remember which lake it is or if it's a river, but it's of Pine County. So we made that, or like had that made. Lawn games. So go outside for 15 minutes on your break, go hang out, play some, I think we have washers, bean bag toss, a couple of games. We have therapy dogs, thanks to lots of wrangling from Commissioner Lovgren and a contact she had. So just lots of really fun things. It's meant to, it's not going to change your life in one day, but it's meant to give you tools for here's things you can take away and use throughout your everyday life. And just demonstrate it. And it's supposed to be really fun. And there are prizes. So if you come, you get a passport, and each thing you do, you get stamps, and the stamps will give you tickets to enter into prizes. So it's supposed to be lots of fun. And keep an eye out on your email, because later today, there might be another video from Wanda. So it's meant to be fun. Questions, thoughts?
I really value that you put this into 2 periods, because we have employees that, I mean, we can't have all of our employees take off to go to a wellness. So I just really value how you guys work together to make sure that everybody can participate in this. I think it's so important, and yeah.
Yep. So it's designed that, yeah. It's designed because we know that, front desk coverage needs to be maintained, or, intake in HHS or sheriff's office. So, yep. Morning is not quite carbon copy to the afternoon, but it's very similar sessions. So maybe you work with your coworkers to be like, oh, I really want to go in the morning to do this, and I'll cover you in the afternoon, vice versa. So very, very similar.
The food trucks.
Oh, I can tell you. So we will have Hog Wild, who I believe they normally hang out at the fair. So they're well-known local. And then we have the Bougie Waffle coming, which make really, I told you, so exciting. They do savory and sweet, really fancy waffles, hence the name, and they're apparently delicious. I have not had them, but I will soon. So, and they will be here from 11 to 2. So lots of breadth of people like being able to go out and check them out. Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Come hang out. You guys count. You can come hang out too.
Thanks, Sam. 49er Training Center invitation.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I was contacted over the weekend by Christy LaFlores on behalf of the 49er Training Center, and they have been commissioners and the sheriff and any staff who's interested to come out to the facility. The 24th of October looked like a day that we work for commissioners as a Tuesday that didn't have a board meeting. So that worked for 49ers as well. So if you're agreeable to that, I'm going to call a special meeting for October 24th at 10 a.m. at the 49er Training Center. We will do that. And we did say that it's weather dependent, of course, but there will be the opportunity to tour and operate.
Oh, I love that part.
I will make a motion to have a special meeting on that day. That facility is phenomenal. The things it does for our community is sweet.
Second, have a second. More seconds. Got a motion by Lovgren, second by Moore to set up a special meeting on the 24th of October to visit the 49er Training Center. Any discussion? Not. Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 4, Commissioner Waldham,
Yes.
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Levin. Aye. Thank you.
Okay, now the part I wanted to get to before
We're all anxious to resolve.
preliminary budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm gonna take this.
All right, we're all anxious to resolve the preliminary budget. So ideally today, if commissioners are satisfied, you'll set a preliminary levy. You don't need to formally adopt a preliminary you just should have a set or a comfort level with the budget can be funded by the preliminary levy that you would approve, if that makes sense, because there's still a lot of opportunity to make adjustments on the budget. So in the packet was some information. We'll highlight some of that. And we'll start with the Health and Human Services budget. So that budget currently balances with no additional levy and the use of $78,000 of reserves. That seems to be a reasonable amount. We think that department will be under budget in 2023. And so spending a little bit of fund balance is reasonable. One outstanding issue maybe relates to burials. Right now, the county pays up to $1,500 for the burials. In conversation with funeral directors, that does not cover the full cost. If the county board wanted to add any more money to that, that would be an impact on the HHF budget. So for example, if you went from $1,500 to $1,800, assuming about 21 funerals, that's about $2,100. And so I think Becky can probably fit that in her budget if you ask her to do that. But just recognize that puts a little more pressure on her budget, or you'd have to put a little levy there. The highway budget is balanced. The operating budget is balanced without additional levy money. There is a $150,000 levy increase for vehicle purchases. Mark reviewed that at his budget presentation. In the preliminary budget, I did not include the armored van. That's a topic that you may want to have more conversation on, but if you wanted to add that armored van back in, that would be an additional $100,000 of levy or additional $100,000 of funding. The general fund is got a deficit of $660,000. That includes, or maybe I'll go down to the most significant changes. So to get from that, $1 million+ out of balance to that $700 or $660,000 number, we eliminated both the revenue and the expense for a half a year of the school resource officer because that's up in limbo. We canceled that out by putting in $6,500 of timber revenue. So the preliminary budget did not include anything for timber revenues. We know that there's a lot of uncertainty in revenues off tax forfeited land, but it seemed like a reasonable way to account for both of those without having a levy impact. We eliminated the sheriff's office lieutenant position. And still in the budget are the sheriff had requested handguns at $50,000, $50,000 for less lethal weapons, $35,000 for an ATV, and $50,000 for range improvements. All of those are still in the budget, and there's a lot of opportunity for conversation of what are the priorities, but it keeps those dollars in the budget at this point. Also in the budget is the assistant attorney and the probation agent. Those are both budgeted as a January 1st start. In reality, it's hard to get a new position on board January 1st. So if those actually started, say, March 1st, there's about $30,000 of budget in there that potentially could be reallocated if those start dates were pushed back just to do the normal recruitment process. And then the auditor treasurer position going from part-time to full-time is in. That is in as of January 1st, partly for need because of the upcoming elections and work that position needs to ramp up for. And also because that position presumably would be a restructure of an existing incumbent. And so would not need a separate recruitment position or process. Wages, There's 5% in the budget for cost of living adjustments. If it's more than that, and we just this morning had a meeting on labor negotiations, so we know that none of the unions that we've met with have offered to settle for 5%. So that's an open issue. Health insurance, we have a 10% increase in the budget. We know we have some estimates from Gallagher looking at 8.5%, 9%, and 10%. My sense is that there's a comfort level anywhere in that range, and by October, the first meeting in October, we'll be in a position to set that number more definitively. We do have a local and tribal consistency fund that we have received $100,000. It's another part of the ARPA legislation. That money thus far is not dedicated to any particular use. It can be used for virtually any legal purpose except for lobbying. And so there's kind of a blank slate if you want to use those funds for, whether it's applying to the jail remodel, because if you remember back when we were finessing the ARPA money, we had $1 million, but we reduced some of the jail. But if we do a project, we're probably going to need to come up with more than the $830,000 that's in that ARPA fund still. Could be, to buy a vehicle such as an armored van, could be to reduce the levy, could be whatever you might want to use it for. To balance the budget, just as it sits today, would be a 4.08% levy increase. I think based on, my assessment and Kelly's assessment that if you wanted to do a levy that high, that would certainly fund everything that is in the budget that has been requested that I didn't identify as being cut. Does that make sense? I mean, it just, but there is some maneuver room if you want to look at something less than 4%. And then the bottom of that page 2 just gives you a little snapshot comparing 2023 budget to 2024 budget to see where the spending changes are. And so if you look down, maybe focusing on the increases, you see the auditor treasurer, that 10.4%, that's really being driven by moving that part-time position to full-time. The attorney is really being driven by adding a new assistant attorney. In the assessor office, we know we changed the work week for appraisers from 37.5 to 40 hours. So that's adding an increase there. In the sheriff's office, we do program some additional equipment because we know we did receive some public safety aid that's intended to be used for public safety items. Dispatch and jail are in the budget at 100%. Last year, we only budgeted at 95%. So you see those increasing by double digits, but in reality, we're budgeting differently. That's why some of that increase is there. And I know Rod called that out in his budget presentation, the difference on those. The solid waste and recycling is going up 13%. That's because the 2023 budget did not account for the Bruno site, but we started to pay more mid-2023. And so in 2024, we're just continuing that more expensive contract. So the year-over-year change looks significant because we didn't budget last year for it. And then in extension, it shows a 28.5% increase, but that's due to moving the administrative position from my budget to the extension budget. It also did go from part-time or from 3/4 time to full-time, but it's at a much lower rate because of a new employee versus as senior employees. So those highlight the general fund last year, or excuse me, 2023 budget to proposed 2024 budget. And then also in your packet, there's just the levy since 2016, so you have that history. So that's the table as best as I can set it for your consideration.
Well, we can make it easy, we can make it hard, we can make it whatever we want. Anybody got any immediate thoughts? Otherwise, I'll give you mine. I've always subscribe to the theory that we do our best work early. And because historically, what we set in September generally is what we end up with in December. I would say this year would be my exception to my rule. Because we have a couple of pretty big unknowns. We have a lot of bargaining units left. Or all of them to do. We don't have a final on our insurance. So I would be more comfortable setting it at 2.8 or 3, but I would be okay with setting it at 4 until we know where we're at.
We can always go down.
Because we can work on coming down, but we set it too low, we're gonna be in a pickle come and some. And we've got really good staff to help us work out the details. That's just Steve's opinion.
I agree.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
David, how much more of the ARPA money is out there again that could be tapped into?
Yeah, I can't give a detailed answer today because I don't have that in front of me, but by tap into, there's 2 categories of unspent ARPA money. So there's ARPA money that's been committed via contract. And to pull back that, and I'm thinking of the housing and commercial rehab contract with Lakes and Pines, for example, would probably not be feasible. The contracts that we have that we could pull might be the U of M Extension Youth Development, which I think later in the agenda, we'll get an update on that. There is some money program for public health. I think that's $90,000. And then there is the $830-ish thousand that's programmed for the jail remodel. So though with, all of those would have, I guess, choices and consequences that, as a board, you can make based on your preferences and priorities.
And then also, was there like 400,000 left in economic development that has been set aside for that?
I don't know the remaining amount. That money is programmed, that pays Leslie's salary in essence. So to take that money away would then require either funding her position from other sources or eliminating the position.
Correct. Okay.
And that total is not her annual salary, just in case anyone was worried. That's a multi-year accounting of her salary and benefits. And I know Matt and JJ attend the HRA EDA meetings. Leslie has been working to develop other revenue sources through grants and program revenues that we can start to incorporate over time to help offset the amount that's required from the ARPA or other sources.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we set our every 4%.
I'll second.
And Mr. Chair, before you finalize that, Kelly is going to give you a dollar figure since we want to have a levy in dollars.
Yes, so 4% would be 22,123,145.
You said that one more time.
22,123,145.
I will set the levy at that. 22,122.
And 23, 145.
123, 145. I am 122.
we have a motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore to set our levy at $22,123,145. Is there a discussion on that?
Yeah, the discussion, I guess, would be just later where we can figure out it. You talk about any new revenue streams when we talk to the economic development and when we refer to Leslie. I guess I just want to make sure we have some discussions of new revenue streams in the form of property taxes with the amount of land we're still sitting on in this county that should be back in private ownership. Because I'm just always concerned with who pays the bill, the taxpayer. And again, we got record high gas prices again. Everybody's feeling the hurt. So that's just a discussion I want to have, is having that money come in.
Mhm. Yeah, I hear you, JJ.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Otherwise, Debbie, you want to call the roll?
District 5, Commissioner Ludwig.
Aye.
District 1, Chair Holland.
Yes.
District 2, Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Lundgren.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Waldman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. We'll move on to updates. Central Minnesota Jobs and Training.
This Friday, we have the suicide prevention online that anybody can attend. On October 27th, they're doing a celebration breakfast, which is what they used to call the legislative breakfast. They're going to do a celebration and celebrate employers' successes. So it's going to be a fun day. And then a lot of concern about a federal shutdown and what that's going to do, because then they won't get the money that they need to pay their last part of the budget needs that they're going to have, like employees and that type of stuff. So that was about it.
East Central Solid Waste, garbage is up. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but 11,500 and some tons were collected last month. Just do the math on that. What a ton of garbage times 11,000 is. It's a lot of pounds. Anyway. Otherwise, things are going along good for the permit for the new cell, so we're all right. Library.
I just got one.
Yeah.
You had said that the current director is retiring.
Yes, she is.
Are they gonna, and then someone will take her position? Are they gonna continue to have an assistant?
Here's our plan, our succession plan for immediate succession is she is going to go on a phased retirement. So in January, we will appoint our assistant director as the director. And Janelle will go on half-time, basically about half-time. And mostly take care of office stuff. And John will run the plant. But he will be the official director after the first of the year. Sometime, maybe February-ish.
You guys think you're gonna fill that position after it's all done, or don't need? Well, it's not that big deal.
I think we need to, Josh. I think there's too much for one person. There's too much going on there. But we'll see.
Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for the question. Regional Library.
At Pathways, we actually had a pretty quick meeting, but one of the things that we did talk about was the library in Sandstone that still is not open. What it came down to now is that they just realized that they didn't have any security cameras. And so they put out and are waiting for a quote. And as of yesterday, they haven't gotten that quote yet. And then the library in the city is taking up lights and electrical and AV training today.
They're going to be open by the time we have our AMC meeting.
I think we'll be allowed to be in there whether they're open or not. It would be nice if they were, but yeah.
AMC Fall Policy Committee, David and Terry and I were there. And Becky Foss was there because her and Terry presented on our Family Resource Center. So it's really fun to see our own people up on stage, and they did a wonderful job. So thanks for doing that, and thanks Becky for doing that. All I know is At the end of Thursday, about 4 o'clock, I went back to my room and sat down with my wife and she said, so what did you learn today? And I had to look back at the agenda because to remember what they talked about at 8 o'clock in the morning, man, they packed a lot of information in there. But I do remember what they talked about, and it was the tax delinquent sales, the forfeiture sales. It was a really, really good presentation from Metro staff and a St. Louis County rural, their land commissioner and Paul McDonald, their county commissioner, did I thought, a wonderful job. Probably a lesson that we should take about every 2 or 3 years as rural county commissioners on how we ended up with this amount of public land and what our job as stewards of that land is and how it has impacted our economies in northeast Minnesota from Pine County north.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of what we are and who we are. And so I thought that presentation was really, really good. And there were many good transportations. I sit on the transportation committee. We had a lot of great presentations there about the new legislation. They're still trying to figure it all out. What happened in this last legislative session, which is kind of ironic because usually we're talking about policies that we want to promote for the next legislative session. So that part was a little confusing, I think, to most people, because the Department of Transportation people were there, the deed people were there, and we're still unraveling all of the changes that got made this last legislative session. The good news is there is more revenue coming our way for transportation. Just because there's more revenue streams. And if all those revenue streams hold up, the worry they have is some of those revenue streams are not constitutionally dedicated like the gas tax. So that if the economy goes in the tank, it's easy for legislators to rob a fund because they've done that in the past. They've done it to all of our funds. So, but the constitutionally dedicated funds are increased. They did index the gas tax, so that will help as things go forward. So anyway, Terry was there.
So I did Health and Human Services, and I think on the forfeited land, so the thing that really excited me was that Hennepin County also forfeited this year, and they also had a land sale because they said, legislature needs to change. We're doing what they told us to do in statute, and we can't stop doing that. And if we do, we're going to go so far backwards. So it was good to hear that they're continuing to the same way Pine County did. So yeah, that was good. So I sat in on Health and Human Services, and we talked a lot about how antique our system is in social services. So we had the state come up and sit with us last year, I think it was, or was it the year before, to talk about how horrible our system is and hoping for changes. And we haven't gotten anywhere, but that was the main thing is, we had a big ICWA meeting prior to that. And I'll go on a little bit more about that in a little bit maybe, but the system's horrible and we need to get the system fixed or we're not going to be able to fix where we're at with ICWA or with our children. And so I did send a letter out to Commissioner Harpstead, and I talked to her at that meeting about her coming back to Pine County and her coming to Pine County instead of sending her staff, but for her to come to see what the system is so that she can understand what the problem is. And then we're going to actually take it a step further and ask our legislatures to come because they're the ones that we are asking for them to give us money, right? So if they don't understand what the problem is, they have not a clue why we want it. And then I got a quick minute with Nathan yesterday. I'm down in the jail. And he wasn't there. He was just going to tour, just for the record. And I wasn't there either for anything other than that. But so, you know, and I mentioned it to him and he said, good, do you know when it's going to be? And I said, no, not yet. But I want you to invite somebody from the other side of the table because we've got all Republicans on our side. We need to bring in some of the Democrats and preferably really young people because our screens are the old green screen and they're not going to have a clue what to even do with those. So for them to see those issues that we're having and hopefully maybe we can get a movement going and that will get people to step up and show people why it's so bad so that we can actually put the effort behind the request for money. So that's kind of where it was. Their big things was the computer systems, we need to get them fixed, which will help our workforce and it will help our employees to be able to do their jobs better. So, I mean, it all kind of wraps into one. We got to fix the system if we want to fix what our troubles are. So.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So in general government committee, the tax forfeiture was the primary policy discussion point. And Kelly is on that task force at AMC. And Kelly, you have represented that there is some diversity of opinion on that group. It came through like loud and clear at the general government committee, how complicated this issue is. And there's not a clear single, here's the best desired outcome amongst counties, not to mention amongst other interest groups. So the general government committee was pretty unanimous that this is probably general government's #1 priority for this legislative session. And it's clear that there's three tracks of resolution. Some of these unresolved issues will be resolved in the courts because there are court cases. Some of them will be resolved through legislation. And we would hope that that legislation will be passed this upcoming session, right? Because otherwise we're another year out. And then some of it will have to be done through Minnesota rules. And just like on the shoreland rules, you know, Caleb mentioned that they have not been able to be rewritten because there's a lot of politics that comes into play to rewrite rules. The same will be true with these rules. And so it is a little bit daunting, I think, but I don't know, Kelly, are there more meetings of your group planned? Because it sounds like there's a lot of work, clarity that still needs to be done.
Did they say that their time is almost up and that AMC needs to give direction for them to continue because they're doing such good work?
Right. Originally, we were only going to meet through really the policy conference. However, we don't have any answers yet. So yes, I mean, we're going to plan to continue meeting and hopefully come forward with some proposals of legislation and how to move forward.
How is it? Are you really, really separated or are you kind of close?
There's just such different solutions to the problem of like the going forward problem. So the properties we're forfeiting today and that we're selling next year. There's just so many different options of how to move forward. And the paths are very different. And the questions continue to come up of if you take path A, are you actually addressing what the Supreme Court said we should not do? Or do we take path B where it's a lot harder but we're for sure addressing it? And then there's something in between too.
Wow. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Very complicated. Soil and water.
I went for JJ.
Okay.
It was a great meeting. The first thing I want to report back, JJ's. Anyway, this group they're pretty, they get a lot of stuff done. I mean, it's moving pretty efficient. Have you been to one of these? No, they're great. Yeah, so they went through with a standard meeting, you know, there's stuff they're doing and but the projects, there was like a Sturgeon Lake project is done. Another shoreline project was done, big Vineland project was started and it's had a little hiccup, but they're get back on track. And then there's a big project, soil health project for Bob Kraft down southwestern. I don't know, there somewhere. Anyway, that stuff just happening. But what piqued my interest was the NRCS staff.
Yeah.
they're better together than what the government agencies, they always don't line up with how things come, timing and money and stuff, but the group is rock solid, but the representative there is interested in starting a burn co-op with the government agencies or controlled burns on these where we need to burn areas of grassland, and they're gonna set it up with a training and have a group, and they're gonna have all different organizations involved in it, which is interesting, because it gets rid of fuel that can cause a big runaway fire. Plus, it's really good for the environment, like grasses and everything else. That was probably the most important thing, but that board is functioning. Nice. What do you say, JJ?
Yeah, thanks for covering that for me, Matt, too. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Kettle River policy.
I think I reported on that our last meeting because we fast tracked it, but I'll give it, we set up governance, this would be a JPA collaborative.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. We're not having another meeting now because we crunched that one back. So I think I reported twice in a month because we met. Or two boards close together because we fast tracked because of that conference. A bunch of.
Chat.
Shack was, we have next week, the Shack retreat. And so a lot of us been planning the Shack retreat. Also, just the rewriting of the system and getting it so that it's more modernized, and if we have another big thing that came up like COVID, that will have some support and something set up on that because we weren't prepared. So just getting stuff ready for what we're going to work on.
Extension.
I went to extension for Carrie because she was holding the fort down in Alexandria. Highlights. I think I said it a year ago too, and that was a great meeting up in Cary. Well, this is a great meeting. But I wrote down, this was the first year that every county in the state had a egg farm family.
Really?
Yep. And the youth in 4-H, I'm gonna jump around here, but the youth 4-H is up to 10,154 new.
Throughout the state?
State.
Okay.
Yep. And in 2022, that's 2022 numbers. And over 7,000 of those kids were first generation.
That's
Yeah, it was a university numbers or. That was just a pretty big jump. Let's say something about coming out of COVID and everything else, I thought that was really interesting. And the rest of the stuff was going over the budget and, and I explained that we had met with Craig and he wanted to know, his numbers are in there for now, that's good. And then towards the end, there was something I should talk to Jeff about this because it's probably not part of this meeting. It's just, there were some issues that not in our county, but at another fair that Mary Lang was doing some judging at. Yeah. But that was just, I'll address that with us. They want feedback. And I'll talk to you about it afterwards. There was they saw somebody with a gun in a building, open carry issues and stuff and that kind of stuff. So I told them that I would research it the best I can. And I've already reached out to Jeff. We haven't met. And then you could bring back just a general idea, because Minnesota is an open carry. It's a concealed carry too, right? But I don't know what happens inside a 4-H building. There was no problem. So she just saw it as alarmed, which is fine, and she didn't raise any issues, but she wants an answer back. The group does. So,
okay.
Sounds good. So I'll work on that.
Chemical health.
Well, I was in Alexandria and Matt was at the extension meeting. So
Okay. Lakes and Pines, we met Monday. And passed the usual stuff, except that we had a quite a lengthy discussion about homelessness in East Central Minnesota. Because there was a grant that was available and I think they missed seeing it early enough. So they would have had to react by. Well, the meeting was yesterday and the deadline is Thursday. So in the end. Decided we just weren't capable of putting it together that fast, but there were some very very wide variety of opinions of what Lakes and Pines role should be with homelessness, providing a homeless shelter that would, because there's just two of them in all of East Central Minnesota. One is in Pine City, and that is for single people only. And they got like 10 beds. And then in Cambridge and a little bit in North Branch, they have like a day center, and then some churches take turns allowing people to stay overnight, families. But it's not nearly adequate. So I think it'll get a lot of attention the next time there's something where there's money available. And then this ARPA funded youth development project, Terry and I met with Extension and some band members yesterday, and David, because we had set aside some money in ARPA to do some youth development through Extension with the band. Really, Extension is having a hard time coming up with somebody that could actually do the job. So the band was there yesterday and suggested maybe there's a partnership that we could forge that with their, how do you say their group? It doesn't matter. They have a youth development group already that they're working with, and they've been very successful in their limited capacity. And with a little bit of help, maybe it seems to tie in exactly with what Becky's already doing and what Terry Fawcett's already doing. And I think, there's the proof will always be in the pudding of if we get some results and we save a couple of kids from out of home placement.
Absolutely.
It takes a couple.
The short name of the program is the Anji program.
Yeah, Anji.
So what's the forward-looking plan to that then, or ideas, what are they gonna do?
Here's the best plan that I could tell you right now is that we told the Anji folks from the band to sit down with Debbie or with Becky and have a conversation and draft up a plan of this is what we would do. And this is some expected results. And they are going to have that to us by mid-October. And so I think I sense some excitement in the air from Becky and from the representatives from the band.
The thing that really hit me was right now they have this amazing program and they have over 400 kids in their program. And that's between the 3 counties, but that's 400 kids that they're already working with. And so, they talked about, one of the things they talked about was having Brianna Matrius go in and she does amazing on past traumas and just the teachings that she can do. And they talked about maybe having her come in. They talked about whether it's just going in and partnering with the organizations that they already have and seeing how we can help them. It was fun hearing Tammy talk about the excellent relationship that she has with Becky now and working with Pine County. And she said, I wish that I could say that all of our counties work together that well. So it's just one more thing that, when we can do these things together, we're building that relationship that's going to go for generations. So, but 400 kids is a lot of kids.
It's a lot of kids. So they're starting to see some success.
Oh, one of the core programs that they have, I want to say his name is Newt, but I know I don't have the right name. They have this gentleman that goes to East Central and Hinkley. He does the ALC. I think is where he works a lot out of. And he'll go there and they'll pick the kids that are really struggling and he'll say, okay, he checks in with them on is it a couple times a week? Is that what they had said? And then he'll say, if you go to school all these days and you get your grades to whatever, and then they give initiatives. So they might give them, $20 or whatever. And they said, it's really not the money. It's the relationship that they have with this man that goes there and says, hey, I care about you. And you think about that little bit of service that they're doing for those students. And did they say they had 8 kids that graduated last year that they did not have hopes for? And they said they were so extremely proud and just excited to be
Plant
able
the seed anyway.
Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that they're already doing that we can help partner with, which to me is amazing.
More to come on that. Iron Pine Solar, how is that project coming? Any news?
JJ, you want to go or?
I got David's notes here on it. We just talked about the easement that they're gonna need from the county to cross, what was it, Cane Creek Road? There's a small little piece. And it's actually tax forfeited land, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And then what else, Matt? Can you add anything?
So where are they at in the development? Are they at 2 years from putting stuff in the ground or 3 years or 1 year?
What they're trying to do is they're getting all their preparation work done for permit. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they expect to have all of their permits done by the second quarter of 2025. And then in 23 and 24 concurrently, they're acquiring the equipment and materials that they need. Construction would start second quarter 2025 and run through the end of 2026. So it takes 2 construction seasons. And then they would do testing and commissioning in 2026 and then live, on the grid, Q1 2027 is their plan.
Are you sharing that, JJ?
4 years from now.
Oh, okay.
That's my technology right here for you guys.
But they want to get everything done, like even some kind of agreement to cross this land. So when they go present, there's nothing left hanging out there. This is it. The project is ready to go. That's what their goal is. All of them.
Yeah, and then
All right.
Mr. Chair, I think we have to discuss, I guess, when we can move forward to get them that right away, right, David?
Well, as soon as they give us the legal description, we can move. We've done other similar ones and Kelly can add some detail.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify too, it is not tax forfeit land. It is land that was turned back after the I-35 project. So it's not tax forfeit land, but overall, we just need a legal description of what they need an easement over, and then the board can grant it, and Reese and I can work on drafting a quick claim deed, and it's a pretty simple process.
Is that like where they want to process that? We can't give them a gap.
It's like a 30-ish foot wide strip of land that they need to run a power line or power lines above ground. So it's not it'll cross the road, and part of the road is this little 30-ish feet of county-owned turnback land. So as soon as they get us the easement, it's really a staff and attorney process that.
We have to be exact before it's the process. Can we say that land? So to satisfy that, can we say, you get your 30-foot gap as long as it lands on this piece of property, right? Or whatever they need. Can you do that?
And I'm not in the business of drafting legal descriptions, but I mean, there's easy ways to do it where you don't actually have to hire a surveyor. I mean, you could just say the house south 50 feet of this property or something, but we'll need to know from them of what they want.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I know in previous positions, there has been property that I've come across that has blanket easements that then prohibits any development. And then you have to track down and extinguish those existing easements that are 50 years ago that really aren't needed.
Yeah, and I mean, this literally does have a road going through the parcel too, so we want to be cautious of that.
The easement will not be the hangup.
So it's in their hands now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other?
I have another. So the ICRA meeting that we had, we were called, there were 7 counties that were included in this meeting with Commissioner Harpstead to discuss ICWA. And one of the things that she said is, I think the average right now for ICWA compliance is 88%. And they said, how can we get to 97%? I mean, because we know that 100% is like really pushing it, but how can we get to 97%? And St. Louis County was there and they are at 97%. And so she talked about it. They've hired 3.5 full-time employees that only do paperwork. That's all that they do because there's so much paperwork that goes with it. They received letters from 3 different tribes in Minnesota and Wisconsin and all over saying, we love working with you. You guys are so good to work with, just really high praise letters from them. But because they were not, this blows me away, they were not at 100%, they were penalized around 250 grand for not being at 100% compliance. That's a lot of money. And then we talked to Stacy from southwestern Minnesota, who's right on the South Dakota border. And they do a lot of ICWA, but they're the smallest county in the state of Minnesota. And they only get $4,500 for doing ICWA because they're the smallest one. And because South Dakota does not have, they don't have to do what Minnesota does. So we have to send out all these letters to our tribes and saying, is this person a member of your tribe? And there's all these checklists that our employees have to do. And South Dakota doesn't have to respond. And they're saying, leave us alone. We don't have the staff to deal with you. We don't have to answer these questions. Just leave us alone. So she said they're docked $2,000. Well, they only get $4,500. So they're docked almost half of what they get because they're not compliant. Being the person that doesn't really work with them in the room, I got kind of loud about that's not appropriate. You can't keep taking the money from these people when they're trying so hard. 3%. And you're going to take $250,000 from them. So that's some of the stuff that we talked about is they've got to, instead of slapping the employees and saying, you didn't do that all the way, you're going to get slapped. One that Neil brought up from Cass was they received their certified letter back from a tribal member and they signed the certified letter, but they didn't date it. So they got tagged for that because the person that sent it back didn't put a date on it from when they signed it. That's the kind of stuff that our employees are dealing with. So I did send out the letter, like I mentioned, to Commissioner Harpstead and talked about the fact that we will be inviting legislature to come with so that they can understand this system. We talked about it before that when our employees sit down to enter, say you've got 4 children in your family, they have to enter every piece of information 4 separate times into the system. And I said, I keep hearing Steve Holland, if Amazon can do it, the state of Minnesota can do it, which kind of got a little smile from Harpstead, but just a little one.
You think it'd be out of that point?
You would think, yeah, you should be able to do something. So, that's the issue that we have with our system, besides the fact that it shuts down on them while they're entering. And so you don't know where it left off. You don't know. The employees that we have that do those jobs are amazing and their patience level is way better than mine. One of the things that was brought up is that you bring in new staff that are going to work in social services and they look at that screen and go, what is it? Because it's an old green screen. It's something they've never seen before. And so they said, right now, if they work for 2 years, it's a good thing. And the majority of them, she said, we have people that walk in and look at that screen and say, yeah, I'm not working on that. And they walk right back out the door. So hearing those testimonies, but you keep wondering if it is instilled in their knowledge. So hopefully we'll be able to get a meeting set with her and some of her staff. And I did talk to Nathan yesterday and he got all excited. He's working with a legislature from over by the Dakotas, who actually was part of getting the MIFPA going in Minnesota when ICWA was on the edge. And it's like, so I'm going to reach back out to him because if she can't be here for this meeting, he's going to invite her, but then get that county to invite her to go see it there. And that's where I think we're going to need to start working, is to get these other counties to get their representatives there so they can see how bad the system is. And so when we go there for those asks, which we really truly need, because it's going to help our workforce and employees, they need to understand why we're asking. So that was the big part that came out of the ICWA and the human service meeting. It was an interesting meeting. The other thing that I did was I had the finance, pension, and intergovernmental affairs yesterday with NACO, and they talked about there's an election bill that's with the 118th Congress right now, and it's not likely to pass. Fiscal responsibility prevention, there's municipality bonds, county support reinstating the tax exempt status of municipal bonds. So if we can get them that they would be tax exempt. So that was a big part of where they were at. The tribal relations. And David, you had sent this to, I think, both Steve and I, when I got on this committee, is we are supporting Congress to come up with what would be a fair tax that we would be reimbursed when property goes into tribal land. So we've got the lands that the Black Band is looking at putting in tribal land, which they rightly so should, it's a lot of their housing. But then the question is, what do we do as far as that tax that we normally get? And so that's one of the things that the tribal relations is promoting, is that we get money back for any property that's put into trust land for tax purposes. Those are my others.
Oh, thank you. Anybody else got any others? If not, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
All right.
Oh, take care.
Yep, have a great day.